So it's springtime. So the sun's all out, it's all nice out. And you look at your car and you're like, wow, it's really dirty. So you go out and clean it. And then when you go to dry it, you're like, wait, what is that? My car's terrible. Well, there's probably something wrong with your clear coat or something on it. And I'm about to explain some of these flaws that might cause your paint to not look as good as it can. So the first one is bird droppings. This is when a bird poops on your car and the poop etches into the paint. This is caused because the bird poop itself is actually acidic, which eats away at the clear coat itself. This can cause major damage, and most of the time it's way worse than it actually looks. And it can be taken off through like wet sanding or compound and polish, something like that. But overall, the best thing to do to help prevent this is wash your car as soon as this happens, or even do like a spot removal of it. Like, this is one of the only times when I actually think a waterless solution is pretty good, because you want to get that off as soon as possible. This could cause major damage. Also, one thing to note is if you have protection on your car, it's going to eat away at that protection first before your clear coat, which is why you may want to do that. So the second one is water spots. What happens is there may be minerals on your car or in your water. And what happens is when you're washing it, or when your car's wet and you don't dry it fast enough or move the water around or keep adding more water to it, what happens is the water can dry up and then leaves those harsh minerals into the paint, like it beds it in there, pushes it very deep inside, and those cause its little water spots. Now, the way to help prevent it is using a foam gun, actually, because you can, a water spot, when it's in a circular form, it's actually acts like a magnifying glass, and it will be more likely to cause water spots than if you apply soap firsthand. But I still think that's a little bit safer, but it's not the safest way. You should still try to be very, very cautious when washing your car, and try to work really fast, because the faster you do it, the less likely that will happen. And also, another great idea is using deionized water, which is supposed to get rid of all the minerals, but even that, I think of it as a safety on a gun, where it's nice to have, but I still want it pointed at people, you know? And also, another tip is to use soap with water softeners in it. Those can help take away some, well, they don't take away the minerals, they neutralize it, which makes it so it's less likely to cause water spots. There are a lot of water spot removers that you can buy online. After you use them, then I would apply protection back on to your paint afterwards. So clear coat failure is when the clear coat just stops working, and that's because there is no clear coat left. This is caused by lots of scratches over time, causing it to fail, either that, or just over time the sun's beating down on it and it just runs out of UV protection, so then it breaks it down and then it goes away. And ways to help that is just applying protection and washing it safely and being very careful with your car. So orange peel happens when the car is actually sprayed. So when a car is painted, it's not perfectly flat like a mirror. It has all these little tiny waves, which is hard to see when you first start looking at cars and stuff, but once you see it, it's like, oh my goodness, now I see it, and you can never unsee it. It's something that's very, very minor, but every car has it unless you take sandpaper to it and wet sand it perfectly flat. Now, if you see a section of a car where it's perfectly flat and the other sections where it's not, they might have actually wet sanded, and that's an indication that that might have been done. Also, sometimes if you see panels where one looks like it has more orange peel than the other, that might indicate that that panel has been repainted. So tree sap, a lot of people think a clay bar is a good idea to remove it. I don't like to use clay bars to remove it on paint because what can happen is once it picks it up, it'll scratch it. It'll like pick it up and scratch it across the rest of the paint. And I find that it's more safe to use solvent-based tree sap remover. And there's also more solvent-based stuff that is more powerful that can do it, that can safely do it on clear coat. But I try to use the least aggressive first, and I don't try to rub. I try to just apply it onto the microfiber itself, apply it down, try to get it when it's cold, and then just like dab it and try to keep dabbing it until it slowly picks up and it comes off. So scuff marks are what happen when something bumps into your car or your car bumps into something, and then it creates this little white mark across it. And that it's sometimes tricky to tell whether or not it is a scuff mark or not, because it might just be embedded material, which can be easily removed. But a scuff mark may have to require some polishing and stuff like that, and sometimes you're not going to get it exactly perfect. A lot of times it hides stuff underneath it. So scratches a lot of times happen because you're putting force on your vehicle. When I wash my car or anything, or touch my car, I try to use the least amount of aggressive way as possible. I try to just very lightly touch it, and whenever I'm trying to do something, if I'm trying to wash it and I find an area where it's like, oh, there's some dirt on there that's kind of not coming off, then what I'll do is I might speed up my motion, or I might try to go over it a couple more times, but the last thing I'm going to do is start putting more force down onto the paint. That is not the way it should go. The soap should be doing the work. The mitt should be only activating the studs and making it do the work. And if you try to force stuff, it causes these scratches. And ways to help prevent that is using protection. It makes it safer and easier to wash your car, and it could help prevent that types of things from happening. And yeah. So embedded material happens when something gets on your car and it's on there for a while, and then it starts to stick and bond to the paint itself. And this happens because paint's constantly expanding and contracting, and then the dirt just seeps into it and it sometimes gets hard and stuff. And that's not really good because it makes the paint not look as good. It makes it harder for waxes and sealants and coatings and all that to stick onto your paint. So it's a great idea to take them off. You can take it off with a clay bar. And another way you can get embedded material is by contact with something else. So if you have like a red car and you have blue all over it, that's probably embedded material, because even like the primer underneath it is black, you know? It doesn't make sense why there would be blue on a car. So if you take a clay bar to it, it should come off. So oxidation happens when there's lack of UVs in your paint and the sun causes damage to it. This can happen because the UV inside your clear coat will actually slowly rise to the surface of the paint. And if you go to buff or polish your car, it can actually take those UVs inhibitors that are on the top of the paint off when you buff it, because you're taking off clear coat. So let's say they're all right here, then they slowly rise to the surface and they buff off this much, now they're all gone. But if you just take off enough, but a tiny bit of clear coat, then there'll still be enough there. Or if you just take it off right at the beginning and apply protection and stuff like that, then it won't happen. But if you do happen to buff it off and buff off all the UV protection, what you can do is apply protection on top of that, like coatings, sealants, and waxes, which will help add UV protection against that happening. Most of the time this happens with like darker colored vehicles, and for some odd reason red cars always tend to have that. That might be because they have a black primer underneath. That's just my guess, but it just soaks up the sun and causes damage. So these types of marks are caused by sanding, wet sanding, and this happens when a person is trying to remove stuff like overspray or scratches and other stuff like that that's on your paint. And if they don't buff it all off and stuff, then you get this little haze that looks like, I don't know, sanding marks. That's what it just looks like. holograms are typically caused by rotary buffers when they're spinning. They get really hot, and the compound is like liquid sandpaper, and it just causes these marks across the paint. A lot of times detailers will make holograms into the paint and then they'll take a DA and then they'll go over and then they'll remove the holograms. And the reason why they do that is because if you buff it first with the rotary, it can take off a lot of the deeper scratches, and then they take off a lot of the little minor scratches caused by the rotary with the DA. But with these dual action polishers nowadays, it's better to just go at it with the dual action polisher, remove the big scuff with maybe some compound or a more aggressive pad, and then because those don't leave those holograms, and then you could go after it with a lighter polish or lighter pad with it, and just have to worry about any sort of little tiny hazing, but there won't be any real deep scratches from the holograms because the dual action polishers don't cause that very often, but it is still possible to have that happen. So swirls happen when something's going in a circular motion. Whenever I'm doing something, I don't like to use circular motions because I feel like it cuts into the paint more. And not only that, if you look at a car, most of the time you're going to look at it in the sun, and the sun shows a lot of scratches and stuff. And the sun is a circle, which shows more scratches, because if your scratches are in a circle, or if it's in a straight line, it's going to be harder for that light to catch it. So try to do straight lines instead of circles, and that'll help prevent that from happening. And it just happens from doing something across the paint and having dirt or contaminants get involved with it. Like if you're waxing dirt and stuff like that gets caught in your pad, that can happen. If you're claying it and you're just overloaded with debris inside your clay bar, that can happen. If you're washing it and you're not using very good wash techniques or not cleaning out your mitt as much, the debris can scratch it and cause those swirls to happen. I believe that every time you touch your paint, there's a chance that you're going to scratch it, so try to be very careful with it. So buffer trails are basically the same thing as holograms, they're just a different name for it. So marring is very, very light scratches. This can happen through like improper drying. If your drying towel has like some dust or debris in it, or well, in my case, my dogs like to run up against my car. And when they do that, they will mar the paint, which causes these tiny little scratches that almost look kind of like a streak on a glass if somebody misses a spot with the window cleaner. I almost forgot the last one, which is overspray. Overspray is caused when somebody's spraying something and it gets onto your vehicle. In my case, it's clear coat, because they tried to respray the front bumper, and then when they did that, the debris got onto the other panels and stuff, and now when you feel it, it feels kind of rough, and it loses clarity and does not look as good as it possibly can. In order to remove that, I would have to wet sand it and then buff out all the sandy marks if I want to get rid of it. A way you can get rid of it also is by using a clay bar, but that does not always work, and in my case it does not with my car. So maybe one day I'll get to that. So I'm Brad Duda from Spark Detail. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.